Good evening. My name is Grace Santana. It is August 10th, 2022. I will be talking about the axial and appendicular skull. I will be starting with this lateral view of the skull here that I have, the image that I have, starting with the nasal bone, the sphenoid, which is located right behind our cheekbone in here, the lacrimal bone, which is located on the inner corners of our eye, the maxilla, which is our upper jaw, the mandible, which is our lower jaw, the vomer, which is a small bone located inside of the nasal cavity that actually divides the nasal cavity, the frontal bone, which is our forehead, the zygomatic, which is our cheekbone, followed by the ethmoid, which is a small bone located right in here behind the lacrimal bone. The posterior skull, which is made up of the mandible, which is the jaw, the occipital bone, which is the very backbone of our head, the parietal bones, which are these larger bones on the side, the frontal bone, which is again our forehead, and the temporal bone, which is this bone here. Now, the lateral skull is made up again of the ethmoid, which is a small bone that's here located next to the lacrimal bone, the frontal bone, which is our forehead, the mandible, which is the lower jaw, the maxilla, which is the upper jaw, the nasal bone, which is this small bone here, the parietal bone, which is located on the top two sides of our head, the temporal bone, which is this bone here, as well as the zygomatic, which is our cheekbone. Now for this next part, I'm going to move out of the way. Our next part is going to be the vertebral column. And the first part is the axis, which is the first cervical vertebrae, followed by the atlas, which is the second cervical vertebrae. The cervical vertebrae consist of C1 through C7 and are found in the neck, followed by the thoracic vertebrae, which are T1 through T12 and can be found in the upper back behind the thoracic cavity. Then we have the lumbar vertebrae of the lower back, which are L1 through L5, followed by the sacrum, which is this larger bone that connects the cervical spine to the pelvis and the sacrum. Now we have the thoracic cage, which consists of all our ribs. So first we have the body of the sternum, which is our breastbone, the manubrium of the sternum, which is this large part that connects it to the upper chest. Then we have our true ribs, which are ribs 1 through 7. Then we have 8 through 10, which are our false ribs, which are the lower ribs. And then we have 11 through 12, which are the smaller ribs in the bottom, that are our floating ribs. Now, the appendicular skeleton is made up of the clavicle bone, the humerus, which is a large bone of the upper arm, the radius, which is the outer bone of the forearm, the ulna, which is the inner bone of the forearm, followed by the scapula, which is our shoulder blade. Now for this next part, I will use the model again, and we have the bones of the pelvic girdle and lower limbs. So the ilium is the upper part of the pelvis. The ischium is this lower part of the pelvis. The pubic is this part of the bone of the pelvis in here. Then we have the femur, which is the long bone of the thigh, followed by the patella, which is our kneecap, the tibia, which is the inner bone of the lower leg, and then the fibula, which is the long bone of the lower leg. the other long bone. Now, for this next section, I will use this drawing of the hand. So, the bones of the wrist start with the trapezium, the trapezoid, the scaphoid, the capitate, the hamate, the triquetium, the pisiform, the small bone in here is the triquetium. I messed up. This is the lunate, and this is the hamate. The metacarpals are the first bones of the hand, followed by the phalanges, which are made up of the distal, middle, and proximal. The disease of the bones that I decided to talk about, which is osteoarthritis, which is a type of arthritis that happens when the flexible tissues of the ends of the bones start to wear down. So it's a type of arthritis, and it is considered a degenerative joint disease. Thank you.